A black woman walking in here with a $12,000 check. Who'd you steal it from?
Right in the middle of the lobby, in front of dozens of people. A branch manager said that straight to the face of a 62-year-old mother, a customer of this bank for 12 years.
I have every document you need. Process my check.
He laughed. Then he snatched the check right out of her hands, tore it in half, tore it again, right in front of everyone. The whole lobby went dead silent. Not a single person opened their mouth. But this story doesn't end the way Garrett Dawson thought it would. Not even close. Let me take you back. About an hour before that check was torn apart. It was a Tuesday afternoon in Charlotte, North Carolina. One of those plain, forgettable days where the sky is flat and the air doesn't move. The kind of day where nothing is supposed to go wrong. Sylvia Stewart stepped off the city bus at the corner of Worthington Avenue. She was 62 years old. She worked 2 jobs, weekday mornings at a dry cleaner, weekend nights restocking shelves at a grocery warehouse. Her knees hurt when it rained. Her hands were rough from years of work she never complained about. She kept her hair pulled back, her clothes clean, and her dignity in a place no one could reach. Today was supposed to be a good day. Inside her purse was a manila envelope. Inside the envelope was a check for $12,000. An insurance settlement she'd been chasing for 3 months. Phone calls, paperwork, being put on hold for 45 minutes just to be transferred to someone who put her on hold again. But finally, the check had come, and every dollar of it was going toward her medical bills. A procedure she'd already postponed twice because the money wasn't there. Today, it was. Sylvia walked into the Heritage Federal Bank branch on Worthington Avenue, the same branch she'd been using for 12 years. Same glass doors, same gray carpet, same row of teller windows behind the same polished counter. She walked up to the counter and set her envelope down. Colleen Price, a young teller, mid-20s, 3 months on the job, smiled at her. "How can I help you today, ma'am?" "I'd like to deposit this into my account, please." Colleen took the check, typed the account number into her system, and nodded. "Sure thing. Just give me 1 moment to pull this up." Everything was normal. Everything was the way it was supposed to be. A customer, a teller, a routine transaction on an ordinary Tuesday. Then a shadow moved behind the counter. Garrett Dawson, branch manager, late 30s, pressed shirt, polished name tag sitting just right on his chest. He glanced at Colleen's screen, then at the check, then at Sylvia. His eyes moved slowly, up and down. Just once, but long enough for Sylvia to feel it. Long enough for her stomach to tighten the way it does when you've been looked at like that before, and you know exactly what comes next. "Hold on, Colleen." He reached across and slid the check toward himself. "I need to verify a few things before we process this." His words were polite. His tone was something else entirely. "Ma'am, where did you get this check?" He wasn't looking at her when he asked. He was looking at the check, like the answer was already written on her face, and he didn't like what he saw. Sylvia's phone buzzed in her purse. She glanced down. A number she knew well. She pressed the side button and silenced it. She didn't answer that call. She really should have. Garrett picked up the check and held it like it was evidence at a crime scene. He tilted it toward the light, turned it over, held it up again. Then he looked at Sylvia the way someone looks at a stain on a clean shirt. "Ma'am, why don't you step over here with me?" He gestured toward a small desk near the side wall. "For your privacy." Privacy. That was the word he used. But the desk sat right in the middle of the lobby. Every customer waiting in line could see it. Every teller behind the counter had a clear view. There was nothing private about it. Sylvia picked up her purse and followed him. She sat down across from him. She placed her ID, her account card, and the insurance company's letter neatly on the desk. Everything he could possibly need, laid out right in front of him. Garrett didn't touch any of it. Instead, he leaned back in his chair and started asking questions. "How long have you had this account?" Sylvia answered. "Do you have accounts at any other banks?" Sylvia answered. "What's your current employer?" Sylvia answered. "And your secondary employer?" Sylvia paused, then answered. Every question she answered, he followed with another. Not because the answers were wrong, not because anything was missing, but because each question was a small wall, and he kept building them. He picked up his desk phone and made a call. He spoke quietly, turning his body slightly away from Sylvia. But not enough. She could hear the words. Flagged transaction. Verification hold. Non-standard deposit. Non-standard. That's what he called a perfectly valid insurance settlement check from a nationally recognized provider. Sylvia leaned forward. "Is there a problem with my check?" Garrett hung up the phone and gave her a thin smile. The kind that isn't really a smile at all. "We just have to be careful, ma'am. For your protection." For her protection. Like she was the threat. Like she was the thing this bank needed protection from. Two customers in line glanced over. One woman nudged the man next to her. They whispered something, then looked away. Nobody said a word. Garrett disappeared for a few minutes. When he came back, he sat down and folded his hands on the desk like a principal about to deliver bad news to a student. "So here's the situation, ma'am. There's a hold issue on your account. I'm not going to be able to process this check today." Sylvia's jaw tightened, but her voice stayed level. "A hold issue? What kind of hold issue?" "It's an internal flag, system-generated." "Can you show me?" "It's not something I can pull up on screen for customers." "Then can you tell me what triggered it?" "Company policy, ma'am. Manager's discretion." Manager's discretion. Not a regulation. Not a banking code. Not a system alert. Just his discretion. His word. His say-so. That was all it took to stop a 62-year-old woman from accessing her own money. Sylvia straightened her back. "I want to see that policy in writing." The thin smile disappeared. Garrett's face went flat. He leaned forward, and this time he didn't lower his voice. He wanted the room to hear. "Ma'am, I am trying to help you. But if you're going to be difficult about this, I'm going to have to ask you to come back another day, with more documentation." More documentation? She had already given him everything. ID, account card, insurance letter, the check itself. What more documentation could he possibly need? A voice came from behind Sylvia. Firm, calm, but loud enough to cut through the silence. "She's not being difficult. She's asking you a question." It was Diane Moore, 68 years old, retired school teacher. She'd been standing in line for 20 minutes, watching every second of this. She wasn't the type to stay quiet. 34 years in a classroom had made sure of that. Garrett turned to her slowly. "Ma'am, this doesn't concern you. Please wait your turn. It concerns me because I'm standing right here watching it happen. If you'd like to file a complaint, you're welcome to do so after your transaction. But right now, I need you to step back." Diane opened her mouth to respond, but something in Garrett's expression stopped her. Not his authority. his willingness to escalate. She could see it. The way his shoulders squared, the way his eyes narrowed. This was a man who would call security on a 68-year-old woman without blinking. Diane stepped back. The lobby went quiet again. Behind the counter, Colleen Price shifted on her feet. She looked at her screen. She looked at Garrett. She knew what the system said. The check had cleared the initial screening. There were no flags. Not real ones. "Mr. Dawson," she started, "the check did clear the initial—" "Colleen." He didn't even turn around. "I'll handle this." Colleen closed her mouth. She looked at Sylvia. And Sylvia saw it. That look. The "I'm sorry, but I can't" look. The look of someone who knows exactly what's happening and chooses silence anyway. Sylvia stood up, slowly. She picked up her ID, her account card, and the insurance letter from the desk. She placed them back in her purse, one by one. Then she looked at Garrett and said the words that every person says right before they hit a wall they can't break through. "I want to speak with someone above you." Garrett's face changed. Something behind his eyes shifted. Not anger. Something worse. Amusement. "Someone above me." He repeated it like it was a joke, like the idea of this woman, this black woman, standing in his lobby, going above his head, was the funniest thing he'd heard all week. He picked up the check from the desk, held it between two fingers, and looked at Sylvia the way you look at something you're about to throw in the trash. "You know what? I'm going to do you a favor." He tore the check in half. The sound filled the room. Paper splitting apart, clean and sharp. Then he tore it again, 4 pieces. He set them on the desk in a neat little pile, like he'd just finished opening junk mail. "There," he said. "Now you don't have to worry about it." Sylvia didn't move. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She stood completely still. And if you were watching, you might have mistaken that stillness for weakness. But it wasn't. It was the stillness of a woman whose brain was still catching up to what her eyes had just seen. The kind of silence that comes right before the earthquake, not after. $12,000. 3 months of waiting. Medical bills that couldn't wait any longer. Torn apart in 2 seconds by a man who never even read the insurance letter she brought. Garrett leaned in, voice low, almost a whisper. "You can file a complaint if you want, but I'll tell you right now, no one is going to believe you over me." Diane Moore, still standing in line, pulled out her phone. She didn't say anything. She just held it up and pressed record. Colleen stepped back from the counter. Her hands were shaking. 2 other customers looked at the floor. One of them grabbed his jacket and walked out of the bank without finishing his transaction. And Sylvia's phone buzzed again. In her purse, vibrating against the silence like a heartbeat. That phone had been ringing all afternoon, and the person on the other end? They weren't calling to chat. Sylvia stood there for a long moment, staring at the 4 torn pieces of her check sitting on Garrett's desk. $12,000 reduced to confetti. 3 months of phone calls, paperwork, and waiting. Gone in 2 seconds. She took a breath, then another. Then she spoke. "I want to file a formal complaint." Garrett tilted his head like she'd just asked for something unreasonable, like she'd asked to see the moon up close. "A formal complaint." He said it slowly, letting each word hang in the air. "Sure, absolutely. You're within your rights to do that." He stood up from the desk. "The complaint forms are in the back. Give me a minute." He walked toward the rear of the branch and disappeared through a door marked Staff Only. A minute passed, then 5, then 10. Sylvia stood at the desk alone with her purse in her hands and 4 pieces of a torn check in front of her. Every second that passed was designed to do one thing: make her leave. Make her feel like the complaint wasn't worth the wait. Make her feel small enough to walk out that door and never come back. But Sylvia Stewart didn't leave. She stood there, back straight, eyes forward, waiting. When the staff door finally opened, Garrett walked out. But he wasn't carrying any forms. He was carrying something much worse: a security guard. The guard was a tall man in a dark uniform. His name tag read Douglas. He was black, and he looked like he already knew this wasn't going to feel right. Garrett walked up to Sylvia with the guard beside him. He didn't sit down this time. He stayed standing, above her, looking down. "Ma'am, I've been more than patient with you today, but at this point, you're creating a disturbance in my branch. I'm going to have to ask you to leave." Sylvia looked at the security guard, then back at Garrett. "A disturbance? I've been standing here quietly for the past 10 minutes waiting for a complaint form. That's a disturbance?" "You're making other customers uncomfortable." Sylvia glanced around the lobby. The customers who were left weren't looking at her. They were looking at their phones, at the floor, at the walls, anywhere but at her. Not because she was making them uncomfortable, because he was, and they knew it. "If you don't leave voluntarily," Garrett continued, "I will call the police. And I don't think either of us wants that." There it was, the final card, the one that always gets played when nothing else works. Not policy, not procedure, not manager's discretion. Just the raw, naked threat of law enforcement, aimed at a woman whose only crime was asking a bank to deposit her own check. Sylvia turned to the counter. She looked directly at Colleen Price, the one person in this building who had tried, even for a second, to say the right thing. "You saw what he did," Sylvia said. Her voice was steady, not angry, just clear. "You saw him tear up my check. You know it cleared your system. Are you going to say something?" Colleen's eyes were red, her lips pressed together. She looked at Garrett, who was watching her with the kind of look that said, "Choose your next words very carefully." Then Colleen looked at the floor. I'm sorry, ma'am." Sorry. That was all she had. Not because she didn't care, but because she was 24 years old, 3 months into this job, and the man who signed her paychecks was standing 5 feet away, daring her to speak. Sylvia nodded, not in agreement, in understanding. She understood exactly what kind of room she was standing in. A room where doing the right thing costs more than staying silent. A room where everyone could see the fire, but nobody was willing to pull the alarm. Garrett turned to the security guard. "Douglas, please escort this woman out." Douglas didn't move right away. He looked at Sylvia. He looked at Garrett. Something passed across his face. The kind of conflict you can see but can't name. The pull between a paycheck and a conscience. "Sir," Douglas said quietly, "she hasn't done anything." Garrett's nostrils flared. "Excuse me?" "She's just standing here, sir. She hasn't raised her voice. She hasn't threatened anyone. She's just—" "Do your job." Garrett's voice dropped low and hard. "Or I will find someone who will. Are we clear?" Douglas swallowed. He turned to Sylvia. "Ma'am, I'm sorry. I'm going to have to ask you to come with me." Sylvia looked at him. She could see it, the apology behind his eyes. I know this is wrong, but I can't afford to lose this job look. She'd seen that look on a lot of faces today. She picked up her purse. She straightened her coat. And she looked at Garrett one last time. You tore up a check from my medical bills. That money was real. My life is real. And you treated me like I was nothing. Garrett said nothing. He just watched her turn toward the door. Sylvia walked slowly across the lobby. Every step echoed. Every pair of eyes followed her. The same eyes that had looked away when she needed them. Now they watched. Now that it was too late to matter. She reached the glass door. Douglas held it open for her. And right there, right at the threshold between inside and outside, between humiliation and the cold air of the parking lot, her phone rang again. This time she answered. She pressed the phone to her ear, and the voice on the other end said 5 words. Mom, stay right where you are. Sylvia stopped walking. Her hand was still on the door. Her feet were still on the threshold. She didn't step outside. She didn't turn around. She just stood there and waited. Something was coming. She could hear it in his voice. Her son didn't say, "Are you okay?" He didn't say, "What happened?" He said, "Stay right where you are." Like a man who already knew everything and was already on his way. Garrett Dawson was straightening his tie behind the counter, satisfied. Another problem handled. Another situation under control. He had no idea that the situation had just slipped completely out of his hands. Let me take you somewhere else for a moment. 30 miles north of that bank branch. Heritage Federal Bank Course Regional Headquarters, a glass and steel building on the 12th floor of a corporate tower in uptown Charlotte. That's where Nathan Stewart was sitting when his world tilted. Nathan was 32 years old, Senior Vice President of Regional Compliance at Heritage Federal, the parent company that owned over 200 branches across the Southeast, including the one on Worthington Avenue. He'd spent the last decade climbing through the ranks, quietly, methodically, without fanfare. Most people in his life didn't fully understand what he did, his mother included. Sylvia knew her son worked at a bank. She knew he wore a suit. She knew he was doing well, but she didn't know the scope. She didn't know that the man who called her every Sunday morning and brought her groceries on the 1st of every month had the authority to shut down any branch in the region with a single phone call. Nathan kept it that way on purpose. Not out of secrecy, out of separation. He never wanted his mother to feel like she needed to drop his name to be treated right. She shouldn't have to. Nobody should. But that Tuesday afternoon, his assistant knocked on his office door with a printout that changed everything. Sir, there's an unusual fraud hold flagged on an account at the Worthington branch. The account name is Stewart. Sylvia Stewart. Nathan's hand stopped over his keyboard. His coffee went cold mid-sip. He didn't blink. He didn't breathe. He just read the name again. Then one more time, because his brain refused to believe what his eyes were telling him. Then he pulled up the branch's real-time security feed on his monitor. He watched his mother sitting at a side desk while a branch manager asked her questions she'd already answered. He watched her place her documents on the table, ID, account card, insurance letter, neatly, patiently, the way she did everything. And he watched the manager ignore every single one. He watched Diane Moore speak up and get shut down. He watched Colleen Price try to intervene and get silenced with 2 words. Then he watched Garrett Dawson pick up his mother's check, hold it between 2 fingers like a piece of garbage, and tear it apart. Nathan's jaw locked. His hand gripped the edge of his desk so hard his knuckles went white. The pen in his other hand snapped in half. He didn't even notice. He watched his mother stand perfectly still as the torn pieces were stacked on the desk in front of her like trash. He watched the security guard walk out. He watched the lobby full of people do absolutely nothing. He watched his mother, the woman who raised him alone, who worked 2 jobs so he could finish school, who never once asked him for anything, stand there, being treated like she had no right to exist in that building. He picked up his phone and called her. No answer. He called again. No answer. He called a 3rd time, a 4th, a 5th. Each ring felt like a year. While he was calling, he was also moving. He stood up. He grabbed his executive badge off the desk. He loosened his tie, then tightened it again. He walked out of his office and straight into the office of Russell Tate, Heritage Federal's head of internal affairs. Russ, Worthington Avenue branch, right now. Bring your team. Russell Tate had worked with Nathan for 4 years. He'd seen him handle fraud cases, regulatory audits, branch closures. Always calm, always measured, always in control. He had never seen this look on Nathan's face, not once. Russell didn't ask a single question. He picked up his phone, called his compliance officer, and said 3 words. Car, now, go. Nathan tried Sylvia one more time from the elevator. The doors were closing when she finally picked up. Mom, stay right where you are. He didn't say, are you okay? He didn't say what happened. He said, stay. Like a man who already knew everything and was 30 minutes away from doing something about it. 25 minutes later, 2 black SUVs pulled into the parking lot of the Heritage Federal branch on Worthington Avenue. They parked side by side, right in front of the glass doors. The kind of parking that says, this isn't a visit. This is an intervention. The engine hadn't even stopped before Nathan stepped out. He was wearing his executive badge on a lanyard around his neck, the kind of badge that doesn't just open doors, but closes them. His face was set. Not angry. Something past angry. Something controlled and deliberate and very, very focused. Behind him came Russell Tate, silver-haired, stone-faced, carrying a leather folder that held documents Garrett Dawson had never seen and never wanted to see. And behind Russell, a compliance officer with a tablet. On that tablet was 90 minutes of security footage, already downloaded, time-stamped, and bookmarked at every moment that mattered. Nathan pushed through the glass door, the same door his mother had been standing at when she answered his call. She was still there, still holding her purse, still standing, because Sylvia Stewart does not sit down when someone tells her to leave a place she has every right to be. Garrett Dawson was behind the counter, adjusting paperwork, straightening pens, acting like the last 2 hours had been just another Tuesday afternoon, a small inconvenience, handled and forgotten. He saw the badges first, then the suits, then the SUVs through the window. He straightened his tie, rolled his shoulders back, put on his best branch manager smile, the same smile he'd used on Sylvia, the same one that never quite reached his eyes. He walked around the counter with his hand extended. "Welcome to the branch, gentlemen. I'm Garrett Dawson, branch manager. How can I help?" Nathan walked right past him. He didn't shake his hand. He didn't slow down. He didn't even glance in his direction. He walked straight across the lobby, past the side desk, past the teller counter, past every silent face that had watched his mother be humiliated, and stopped in front of Sylvia. "Mom?" His voice cracked, just barely, just for half a second, in a place only she could hear. "Are you okay?" Sylvia looked at her son. She didn't say anything at first. She just reached out and straightened his badge. the way she used to straighten his collar before school. Then she nodded. The kind of nod that holds back 12 years of moments like this one. Garrett's hand was still extended, hanging in the air. His smile was dissolving in real time, sliding off his face like something melting. The color left his cheeks. His arm dropped to his side. Every person in that lobby was watching. The same people who had looked at the floor 10 minutes ago. Now their eyes were locked on the Heritage Federal Executive badge hanging from Nathan's neck, and on the woman he'd just called Mom. "Wait," Garrett said. His voice came out thin, almost childlike. "You're..." Nathan turned around. "My name is Nathan Stewart, Senior Vice President of Regional Compliance, Heritage Federal Bancorp," he said it once. Calm, clear, the way you state a fact that doesn't need repetition. "I have reviewed the security footage from this branch over the past 2 hours. Every second of it." He took one step toward Garrett. Not aggressive, not theatrical, just close enough that Garrett had to tilt his chin up to meet his eyes. "I'm going to ask you one question, Mr. Dawson, and I want you to think very carefully before you answer." The lobby was silent. But this wasn't the silence from before, the cowardly kind, the kind where people pretend not to see. This was a different silence, the kind where every single person is holding their breath because they can feel something massive about to land. "On what policy, code, or regulation did you base your decision to physically destroy a customer's endorsed check?" Garrett's mouth opened, then closed, then opened again, like a man drowning in 3 feet of water. "Sir, there were irregularities with the deposit. The account showed..." "The check was issued by a nationally recognized insurance provider. It cleared pre-screening. The account has been active for 12 years with no flags, no overdrafts, and no prior holds." Nathan paused, let every word land. "So I'll ask you again." Garrett had nothing. No policy, no code, no regulation. Because there was none. There never was. The only basis for what he did was standing right in front of him. And it had nothing to do with banking. Russell Tate stepped forward. He opened his leather folder and laid a single document on the counter. His voice carried the weight of a man who had done this before and never enjoyed it. "Mr. Dawson, effective immediately, this branch is under an internal compliance review. All transactions are suspended. Your system access credentials have been revoked as of..." He checked his watch. 3:41 p.m. "You are being placed on administrative suspension, pending a full investigation into your conduct. This investigation will include a review of your treatment of customers over the past 24 months. Garrett's mouth moved, but no sound came out. His hand reached for the counter like he needed something to hold on to, like the floor beneath him had just disappeared. The compliance officer turned the tablet screen toward the lobby. The footage played silently. Garrett snatching the check, tearing it, leaning into Sylvia's face, calling security. Every frame, every second. Every person in that lobby could see exactly what had happened, including the people who had pretended not to. And this time, nobody looked at the floor. Diane Moore, still standing in line with her phone raised, let out a breath she'd been holding for 2 hours. Then she whispered 2 words under her breath. "About time." For a moment, nobody moved. The footage was still glowing on the tablet screen. Garrett's face, caught mid-sneer, mid-tear, mid-threat, frozen in high definition for every person in that lobby to see. The same lobby where he'd stood over Sylvia Stewart like he owned not just the branch, but every person inside it. Nathan turned away from Garrett. He didn't look at him again. Instead, he turned to face the room. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. When a man holds that kind of authority and chooses to speak quietly, every word becomes a hammer. My mother came to this branch today to deposit a check for her medical bills. Money she waited 3 months to receive. She walked in with every document required. She's been a customer here for 12 years. He paused. Let that sit. She was interrogated. She was humiliated. Her check was physically destroyed in front of all of you. And she was threatened with the police for asking to file a complaint. Another pause. Longer this time. This happened in a branch that carries our company's name. A name that's supposed to mean trust. A name that's supposed to mean every person who walks through that door gets treated with the same respect, regardless of what they look like. He let the silence do its work. Every face in that lobby was turned toward him. The same faces that had looked away an hour ago. The same eyes that had studied their shoes while Sylvia's check was torn apart. This is not who we are, Nathan said. And when it is, we fix it. Then he turned to Colleen Price. She was still standing behind the counter. Her eyes were red. Her hands were clasped together so tightly her fingers had gone white. She looked like someone bracing for impact, like she was next. Colleen. She flinched. I saw the footage. All of it. Nathan's voice softened. Not by much, but enough. I saw you try to speak up. I saw you tell Mr. Dawson that the check had cleared the system. And I saw him shut you down. Colleen's chin trembled. She pressed her lips together hard. That took courage, Nathan said. You were the only employee in this building who tried to do the right thing. I want you to know. That was noticed, and it will be remembered. A tear rolled down Colleen's cheek. She wiped it fast, like she was embarrassed. But she wasn't the one who should be embarrassed today. Nathan placed both hands on the counter. I need you to do something for me. Heritage Federal's Internal Remediation Fund will issue a replacement check for the full amount within 24 hours. When it arrives, I want you to process it personally. No holds, no flags, no delays. Can you do that? Colleen nodded. Yes, sir. Thank you. He turned next to Diane Moore. She was still standing in line, still holding her phone up, still recording. She hadn't moved from that spot since the moment Garrett tore the check. 34 years of teaching had taught her one thing above all else. When something wrong is happening, you document it. Ma'am, Nathan said. Thank you for recording what happened today. That footage, along with ours, will be part of the formal investigation. Would you be willing to provide a written statement? Diane lowered her phone. She looked at Nathan, then at Sylvia, then back at Nathan. Gladly, she said. I've been waiting for someone to ask. A sound rippled through the lobby. Not applause, not words, just a shift. The collective exhale of a room full of people who had been holding their breath for the last 2 hours. A few heads nodded. One woman in the back put her hand over her heart. A man near the door uncrossed his arms for the first time since he'd walked in. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. But it was real. Garrett Dawson was still standing near the side desk. The same desk where he'd sat across from Sylvia and asked her questions designed to make her feel like a criminal. He opened his mouth. One last attempt. Nathan, Mr. Stewart, If I could just explain. Mr. Dawson. Nathan's voice went flat. No warmth, no cruelty, just stone. Anything you want to say from this point forward should be directed to your union representative or your attorney. This conversation is over for you today. He nodded to Russell Tate. Russell stepped forward, placed a hand on the edge of the counter, and gestured toward the back office. Mr. Dawson, come with me, please. Garrett looked around the lobby one last time, searching for a sympathetic face, an ally, a single person who might take his side. He found nothing, just eyes, watching him the way he had watched Sylvia an hour ago, like he was the problem that needed to be escorted out. Russell walked Garrett through the staff door. It closed behind them with a soft click. And just like that, the man who had controlled this room for the past 2 hours was gone. The lobby felt different now, lighter, like someone had opened a window in a room that had been sealed shut. Nathan walked back to his mother. Sylvia was still standing by the glass door. She hadn't moved through any of it. She had watched her son address the room, acknowledge the people who tried to help, dismiss the man who tried to break her. And she hadn't said a word. Nathan stopped in front of her. The executive badge, the title, the authority, none of it mattered right now. He was just her son. "I'm sorry, Mom." His voice cracked again, barely. "I should have told you more about what I do." Sylvia looked at him for a long time. Then she reached up and cupped his face with both hands, the way only a mother can. "You did exactly what you were supposed to do." Nathan closed his eyes. And for the first time that afternoon, in front of the lobby, in front of his team, in front of everyone, he let himself breathe. 3 months later, the story of what happened at the Heritage Federal Branch on Worthington Avenue had traveled far beyond that lobby. Not because someone posted the footage online, not because a reporter showed up with a camera, but because the people who were in that room that day told someone. And those people told someone else. And the truth, the way it always does when it's ugly enough and real enough, found its way to the places it needed to go. Here's what happened to every person in this story. Garrett Dawson was terminated, but not just for what he did to Sylvia Stewart. The internal investigation went deeper than that one Tuesday. It pulled records. It pulled footage. It pulled transaction logs going back 24 months. And what it found was a pattern. Not a mistake, not a bad day, not a one-time lapse in judgment. A pattern. Over the past 18 months, Garrett had placed verification holds on accounts belonging to minority customers at 3 times the rate of white customers with identical account histories. 3 times. Same balances, same account ages, same documentation. The only difference was the face on the other side of the counter. He delayed deposits. He requested unnecessary documentation. He made phone calls to verify checks that had already cleared the system. And in 4 separate cases, 4, he had pressured minority customers into leaving the branch without completing their transactions. Sylvia wasn't the first. She was just the one whose son happened to sit on the 12th floor. Heritage Federal reported Garrett's conduct to the banking industry's federal regulatory body. His branch management license was suspended. His name was entered into the system, meaning any financial institution that runs a background check will see exactly what he did, when he did it, and why he was removed. But here's the part that stays with me. As a condition of his severance, Heritage Federal offered Garrett enrollment in a restorative justice and anti-bias certification program. 12 months. In person. facilitated by community leaders and civil rights educators. People who look like the customers he mistreated. People whose stories sound a lot like Sylvia's. Not as punishment, as a path, a door. Whether he walks through it, that's on him. Nobody can carry a man into his own redemption. He has to choose it. And as of today, he hasn't given his answer. Colleen Price was promoted to assistant branch manager. She was 24 years old and 3 months into the job when all of this happened. She tried to speak up. She was shut down. And for weeks after that Tuesday, the guilt sat on her chest like a stone she couldn't move. She replayed the moment over and over. The moment she said, "I'm sorry, ma'am," instead of, "No, this is wrong." But Nathan Stewart made sure the investigation recorded one fact. Colleen Price was the only employee in that building who attempted to intervene. The only one who tried to tell Garrett the check was valid. The only voice in that branch, besides Diane Moore, that pushed back. Even if it was only for a second. Even if it wasn't enough. It was something. And something matters when everyone else gives you nothing. Colleen didn't just accept the promotion. She earned it by building something that didn't exist before. She designed and implemented what Heritage Federal now calls the Witness Protocol, a system where any employee who observes potential discrimination is required and protected to report it. No retaliation, no write-ups, no quiet conversations in the back office. If you see it, you say it. Period. The protocol was reviewed by Heritage Federal's legal team, tested at the Worthington branch, and adopted across the entire Southeast region. The woman who had been too afraid to speak became the person who made sure no one else would ever have to swallow that fear again. Sylvia Stewart received her replacement check within 24 hours. No holds, no flags, no questions. Colleen processed it personally, just as Nathan had asked. Sylvia's medical procedure was scheduled 2 weeks later and completed without complications. She recovered at home, in the same house where she had raised Nathan alone, the same kitchen where she packed his lunches, the same porch where she watched him leave for college with a suitcase and a promise to make her proud. He kept that promise, just not the way either of them expected. Heritage Federal's regional president sent Sylvia a formal written apology, hand-signed, delivered to her door by courier. It didn't undo what happened. Words on paper never do. But it acknowledged it. And sometimes, acknowledgement is the first brick in a longer road. Nathan Stewart recused himself from the investigation the day after the incident. He submitted the entire case to an independent review board and removed his name from every decision that followed. He didn't use his position to get revenge. He didn't leverage his title to punish. He didn't make it personal, even though it was the most personal thing that had ever happened to him. He used his authority for exactly one thing: to make the system work the way it was always supposed to. He didn't flip the table. He fixed it. Heritage Federal Bank Corp mandated company-wide reform. Bias awareness training became mandatory across all 216 branches, with annual recertification required for every employee from teller to regional director. The Worthington Avenue branch was temporarily closed, fully restructured, and reopened 60 days later under new management. A dedicated compliance hotline was established, a direct line for customers to report discriminatory treatment straight to the regional office, bypassing branch managers entirely. No gatekeepers, no complaint forms in the back. Just a phone number and a person on the other end who is required to listen. The system didn't just apologize, it changed. Not because it wanted to. Not because it woke up one morning and decided to be better, but because one woman stood her ground when every person in the room expected her to leave. Because one son used his power for the right reasons. And because one moment, one ugly, undeniable moment, forced an institution to look in the mirror and deal with what it saw. A Sunday morning, 3 months after the day that changed everything, Sylvia Stewart is sitting on her front porch, a cup of coffee in her hand, the steam curling up slow and lazy into the morning air. The street is quiet. Birds are doing their thing. The sun is warm on her face, the kind of warm that doesn't ask for anything, just gives. Her phone rings. "Hey, Mom. Hey, baby. You need anything from the store?" "Just you. Come sit with me when you get here." She hangs up, takes a sip, closes her eyes. A normal calm. A quiet morning. A life that doesn't need saving anymore, just living. Not long ago, this woman was standing in a bank lobby being told she didn't belong, being told her money wasn't real, being told to get out before the police came. And now she's here. Coffee, sunlight, her son on the way. That's what dignity looks like when it's been taken from you and given back.
He tore her check in half, looked her in the eyes, and said, "No one is going to believe you over me." He was wrong, but here's what I keep thinking about. It's not the moment Nathan walked in with the badges. It's Sylvia, standing at that loud door, refusing to step outside. Before her son showed up, before anyone came to help, she just would not move. 12 years as a customer, 2 jobs, a check for her medical bills, and a man who saw none of that, because he never looked past her skin. Nathan didn't save his mother that day. Sylvia saved herself. The moment she decided she wasn't leaving, what Nathan does would make sure the system that failed her could never fail someone else the same way. That's the difference between revenge and justice. Revenge flipped the table. Justice fixes it. Only me alone. There were a whole lobby full of people watching. They saw everything. So if you were standing in that line, would you be the one who looked at the floor or the one who pressed record? Tell me what you would have done. Be honest. Hit subscribe if you are new. We tell stories like this every week. And remember, your dignity doesn't need anyone's permission. It never did.